Good morning, or good afternoon. It's good to be with you. Unlike my colleagues, Mike and Mark, who have sufficient time to put together some slick slides, I don't have that. No, I'm kidding. I don't have slides, but I can forward those to ASME on some of the programs that I'll touch on today after we leave here today. My name is Adele Ratcliff. I am the director of the Manufacturing Technology Program within the Department of Defense. I work in the Manufacturing Industrial Base Policy Office. The DASD MIP advises the Undersecretary of the Advanced Acquisition Technology and Logistics on matters related to the health and resiliency of the U.S. Defense Industrial Base. So I'm often asked when I'm out talking, why is the Department of Defense focused on manufacturing so strongly? And Mike and Mark have outlined quite nicely ahead of me the importance of manufacturing from an economic perspective. When we look at it from a Department of Defense perspective, our strategic advantage is linked to our ability to make and innovate within our U.S. industrial base. It's undeniable. Nations that accumulate knowledge on manufacturing processes innovate faster and better than their peers. As a nation, we face a number of pressures, national security issues from both our peers, near peers, and non-nation state actors today, in a time when we also are facing economic pressures. To respond to that, the department is pivoting to its third offset strategy, which really depends upon innovation to provide an unequal advantage for our troops to be able to go to war and win. If you don't take anything away today other than this statement, remember this, that manufacturing dominance underpins technical dominance. And that's why we do, at the national level, what we're talking about today. R&D is being accomplished within companies more and more than ever before. As the government, while we're holding our own in R&D, really it's undeniable that R&D is being done more in the commercial market. The globalization and the digitization of our economy allows for new partnerships and what I call shape-shifting of partnerships, both at the innovation level and at the manufacturing level, to seemingly rise and fall every day, which presents tremendous opportunity for innovation, which is going to provide a rich opportunity for the department to be able to tap into for that innovative capability. But just as we focus on the capabilities and capacities and readiness of our joint forces to be able to go to war, we must also focus on the capabilities and capacities of our U.S. industrial base to be able to go to war. That's kind of what our office focuses on. We need to focus on traditional defense sectors, like missiles, rotary wings, tactical jets. And we also need to focus on how to integrate these emerging technologies that we'll pivot to support a warfighter for tomorrow. And we need to be able to tap into those emerging technologies and develop strong, healthy ecosystems that we can incorporate into those traditional defense sectors and integrate them into what I call the joint force of our industrial base for both today and tomorrow. To do that, we have a number of mechanisms within the department, both authorities and investment mechanisms. Within our authorities mechanisms that we have, underneath the Defense Production Act, we have Title I, which is prioritizing in time of war. We can go in and work to reprioritize production lines where items go. We have Title VII authorities, which are for mergers and acquisitions of internationals buying domestic capabilities. So we can go in and look at those and assess those from a national security perspective. We have DPA, Title III, which some of you may be familiar with, which is appropriated out of the banking and finance community. DPA focuses on the ability to increase capacity within the U.S. industrial base for national security matters. We typically look at that as maintaining our U.S. industrial base. So if we need yellow widgets aren't needed anymore by the commercial sector, and so we're at risk of having a company collapse. We can go in and work using those authorities to help create demand signals to that company. Or establish or increase production capacity if needed around critical items, such as silicon carbide powder production for ceramic body armor, as an example. Those are authorities. It's not a program, although Congress has, over the past few years, provided what I call a national constituent add to that authority. Within our investment mechanisms, we have the Manufacturing Technology Program, which I oversee. We're a federated program. We have that at the Army, Navy, Air Force, OSD, the Defense-Wide Manufacturing Science and Technology Program, and DLA, Defense Logistics Agency. All 5 of those come together on an annual appropriated budget of about $200 million a year to try to bring to bear technology for the warfighter in a timely, affordable, repeatable manner. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have technology in the hands of every warfighter, you really don't have capability, right? You have technology if it sits in the labs. And what we really were trying to do is proliferate our capability on the end of every rifle, or hanging on the end of every wing of every jet. So the Manufacturing Technology Program underneath Title 10, Section 2521, has 8 broad set authorities that we use to be able to do that, to go in and invest in many of the tenets that align with the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes: workforce development, infrastructure, STEM, and the technology itself. It is underneath that program at the OSD level, the Defense-Wide Manufacturing Science and Technology Program element, that we have sought to launch the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes that Mike talked about earlier. When you look at traditional emerging technologies, right, traditionally the Department of Defense has gone in and underneath traditional R&D programs has gone in and made a one-off investment through a series of BAAs. And that puts us at risk of what I call ecosystem collapse when we do that. Because we'll go in and make large-scale R&D investments, may work with 1 or 2 companies, do that for several years, meet our requirements, back out of that, and then there's no real commercial demand for that, which puts us at risk downstream when we're maintaining our programs for 40 and 50 years. And then those Title III authorities are used to be able to exercise and prop up that ecosystem for defense needs, right? But that's not necessarily the best way to go about doing it if we can do it other ways. We require on these emerging technologies that we see today, we're using the Mantech program to launch the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes to help create a strong, healthy ecosystem built on both commercial needs and Department of Defense needs. So basically, we want to drive in a deep foundation of workforce development, STEM, common manufacturing processes, technological advancement built on both commercial and defense needs in that common space, and then come in and lay on that post-ecosystem establishment with a very DoD-specific issue, like integrated photonics that Mike talked about earlier. Huge overlap with the telecom industry right now. They'll be the pathfinder for that. And then later on, after we establish the ability to design and make with confidence, we'll come in and overlay for electronic warfare systems, as an example. Hopefully on a much healthier ecosystem that can sustain itself over time after we complete our investments in, say, EW, as an example. Those MIIs, we have 5 of those right now that we have established. The one on additive manufacturing that Congressman Ryan talked about in Youngstown, Ohio, hugely successful. I mean, we've gone from about 40 members initially to almost 150 today in the 5 years. A real example of what you can do in a short amount of time when people choose to work together. One of the key things that we look at in the Department of Defense in these new ecosystems is being able to create core competencies within a supply chain, like I said, to be able to lay in on top of that for our defense needs. And American Makes has some great examples of that happening where small companies like RP plus M been able to become a supply chain member to GE for 3D printing for aerospace components, as an example. It would take a long time for a company to be able to marshal and develop a supply chain around their technology space. And in these new technologies, it's really beyond the risk of a single company. I had one large company tell me, we've been dreaming for years to be able to penetrate the market on integrated photonics and unable to do so. I said, well, why is that? Because even of a company of our size, this was a Fortune 500, 100 company, even for a company of our size, the technology space and the challenges were too broad for us to be able to take on by ourselves. We had to be able to do it within a collaborative effort underneath an umbrella like what we're seeing in these manufacturing innovation institutes. AIM Photonics was the one we were talking about there, but that example translates across all of the institutes that we're launching, whether that's DoD, DOE, or DOC. After our additive manufacturing, we have the Digital Manufacturing Design Innovation Institute, headquartered up in Chicago. Greg Harris is the program manager for that one, growing about 150 members itself. Lightweight Modern Metals out of Detroit. AIM Photonics on Integrated Photonics, headquartered out of New York. NextFlex, which is flexible hybrid electronics, the ability to be able to take electronics and print them on a piece of paper if you need to be able to toss out flyers in a tsunami, to be able to program it to the language of the people who are affected and let them know, hey, how do you get help? Or from a warfighter application when we need it, right? Revolutionary Fibers and Textiles is our 6th one that's in current acquisition right now. The ability to be able to integrate, think about the ability to be able to have your coat also act as your power supply. Pretty critical for our warfighter, right? We're going through a topic call for Institute 7 and 8. That's in our 17 budget rollout. 6 topics out on our multi-topic RFI right now. Soft robotics, think about the robot living among you. Industrial control systems, think about the robot on the shop floor. Mike talked about the 4 site reports on bio. We got 2 biotechnology topics, one on regenerative medicine. Think about wounded warriors coming back from Afghanistan or theater, and we need to be able to help them grow skin back. Bioprinting, the ability to be able to print viruses that can help treat diseases. Cybersecurity for manufacturing, we're all well aware of that threat. And quality and certification, the ability to be able to predict in advance how a product will perform using some of these new technologies that we're developing. That RFI is out on the street. We encourage your constituents to respond to that. It is the equivalent of voting, since we're in the electoral process right now, the primaries. The RFI for the Department of Defense is the equivalent of voting. It helps shape and inform, not only gauge industry's response to their willingness to participate in a public-private partnership on these emerging technologies, but also helps shape and inform the manufacturing challenges related to that. You can access that RFI on that manufacturing.gov website. We'll also be rolling out workshops over the next 2 months to help support the development of those topics. So we will also be posting the information on that on manufacturing.gov. So with that, I think that I will conclude my talks so we can turn it over to Pramod and then move to Q&A.